So today, let's talk about what happens after school. For many young people, especially those with disabilities, that big transition into adulthood can be really uncertain. We're going to dive into a new way of thinking about this, an approach that's designed to replace that uncertainty with real, tangible opportunities. Think about it for a second. That last day of school. For most of us, it's the start of a whole new chapter. You're excited, maybe a little nervous, right? But imagine if for you, that moment felt less like stepping onto a new path and more like, well, a sudden drop off a cliff. And that's really the heart of the problem here. The research that sparks this whole explainer comes from the Czech education system, and it found that crucial topics like work, housing, community life are almost never talked about before graduation. It leaves students and their families feeling like they've just walked right up to the edge of a cliff with absolutely no map and no safety net. So on the one hand, you've got the traditional way of doing things. It's usually formal, happens in a school office, and it's all about what services are available. But the new approach, it just flips that script entirely. It's personal, it's collaborative, and most importantly, it starts with the one question that really matters. What are the students' own dreams for their life?
Okay, so to really see how this works, let's meet James and William. Their stories are right at the center of this new method. And these guys aren't just names in a study. They're basically the architects of their own futures. And following their journey is going to show us exactly how this whole process unfolds.
Just listen to what James has to say here. Notice how specific that is? He's not just saying, oh, I want to get a job. He's actually thought about the environment, the tasks he enjoys, selling and organizing. See? That's the kind of personal detail that gets totally lost in some generic checklist-style plan.
And then you have William's dream. It's totally different from James's, right? And that's exactly the point. His vision is about having a home, being close to nature, taking care of animals. There's no way a one-size-fits-all plan could ever work for both of them. This new approach is all about celebrating that individuality.
So you see, the goal here isn't just to find them a job or a place to live. The real goal, the big idea, is something called active citizenship. And what does that even mean? Well, it's really about empowerment. It's about having the freedom to make your own choices, having strong relationships you can count on, and getting the chance to be a real part of your community.
So, how do we get there? How does this actually work? It boils down to this four-phase process. You start by building trust. Then you move into gathering information. And get this isn't just some quick chat. To really dig into his future, James had 17 meetings. 17! All of that work leads up to a big planning session and finally, a real concrete action plan.
And they really talk about everything. I mean, this goes way beyond just what job do you want. They're covering finances, relationships, hobbies, even household chores. It's this whole life approach. Because let's be real, a good life, the foundation of being an active citizen, is made up of all these different pieces, right?
Okay, so all of this work, all these conversations, they're all leading up to one big moment. And the peak, the climax of this whole thing, it's not some stuffy exam or a formal evaluation. It's a conversation, a carefully planned meeting where the young person is right at the center, surrounded by the people who get them and support them. And this next part just perfectly captures what person-centered means. James wasn't dragged into some sterile school office. He got to choose where the meeting happened. And where did he pick? His own garden. He chose who to invite, his parents, his teacher, and, I love this detail, his best friend. The whole environment was set up to make him feel comfortable and empowered. And here's what came out of that meeting in the garden. This isn't some dusty, formal report. It's a visual map, a living document. It connects his own personal story with his dreams for the future, and it literally plots out the specific people and resources that are going to help him get there. It's his life mapped out. But, and this is so important, this amazing map isn't just a feel-good art project. It becomes the blueprint for a real, formal action plan. For James, that means real steps toward working in that drugstore or garden. For William, it's the path to that house with farm animals. It's what builds the bridge from the dream to the day-to-day reality. So, what was the impact of all this? Well, the feedback was just incredible. Parents talked about how their kids grew through the process, gaining confidence and a better sense of who they were. And the parents themselves felt like they finally had a clear path forward, armed with tons of important information. So, in the end, this is about so much more than just James and William's stories. The research really calls for a big systemic change. It's about making active citizenship the guiding star for all transition planning. And that means tackling the real-world barriers, like a lack of funding and training, and always starting with the person and their dreams.
And all of this really leaves us with a big question to chew on. The stories of James and William show us what's actually possible when we stop focusing on limitations and start listening to aspirations. It's a challenge, really, for all of us to think about how our own schools, our workplaces, and our neighborhoods can become places where every single person has the support they need to go out and build a truly meaningful life for themselves.